This is my video on the family role in talent development. Family can be highly influential in the development of sport exercise. For example, Eubank Jr. is highly monitored by his dad, Chris Eubank, who is also a boxer. Children are more likely to achieve success in sport depending on the type of family they come from. They're more likely to be successful if their parents have been participants when they were younger. There are several examples where family members compete in the same sport and are both relatively successful, such as the Murray brothers. Andy Murray, who's a very successful tennis player, and his brother Jamie also plays. The Neville brothers, Gary and Phil, were both at Manchester United together, and Phil joined some other clubs as well. They managed to spur each other on in football. And the Williams sisters, who were also tennis players, they were both successful in the sport. They could compete against each other when they were younger, growing up, for added competition. So the sibling competition helps the talent development in sport. This graph here by Brackenridge shows parents' involvement in sport. Often in Sunday League football you see parents that are either quiet, but the majority of the time they're really loud on the touchlines, which can cause a problem and take away the participation and enjoyment of the kids. So you can have opposed and inactive, which means they're under-involved. So the parents either don't go to the game or they keep quiet. Or at the other end of the scale, they can be proactive or hyperactive, which means they're over-involved, so they're shouting for decisions and that, when especially at young ages it's more for enjoyment and participation, as I said. The model shows the different ends. Parents can help with travel and funding to kids in sport, or they can either do nothing but be a bad influence. So the family can play a massive role in talent development. A reference from Bloom says that the family's role has changed as a young person develops from the early stages towards a higher level of sports excellence. This role is considered to be more decisive in the talent development area. Highly talented children who are successful in sports are very much supported by their parents. As Coakley's reference explains, it's more particularly coming from the father's side. So just to summarise the family's role in talent development, you can see where the parents were involved in a certain sport, such as Peter Schmeichel, who was a successful goalkeeper mainly at Manchester United. He passed things on to his son, like the skills and the tips, which has produced Casper into being about to win the Premier League title with Leicester. Chris Eubank helps Eubank Jr. With skills and tactics of boxing to make him successful in the sport. So Eubank Jr. is following his dad's footsteps. And finally, the Neville brothers managed to play with each other from a young age and compete. And they, not only in football, they had roles at Valencia Football Club as well in Spain, where Gary was the manager and Phil was his assistant. So they've used the family role to develop things with the talent, so also the knowledge of the game that they picked up, as they'd be able to discuss it maybe when they were younger as kids. So it can be siblings that help you develop talent in sport as family, or a father or even mother, but as a reference before mentioned, it's usually the father's side that helps. Just to touch on biological factors, it's known that Kenyans are good long distance runners. They tend to have long and thin legs. It could be argued it's due to a lack of good food that they have, and also it can be looked at as a biological factor that they have to run to school due to a lack of transport. A little fact here is 17 American men in the history have run a marathon faster than 2 hours 10 minutes. However, 32 people from Kenya did it in October 2011. And also in 2011, 258 Kenyans ran a sub 2.15 marathon, whereas Great Britain just had the one, despite doubling their population. It's interesting with the biological factors because Martin Lell, who's very successful, winning London marathons and marathons in New York, for example, he's very successful. However, he's never been in a gym, which shows that where you come from and the biological factors such as the long, thin legs can play a factor. Just a reference to support the biological factors in this video from Fisher says that land in Kenya is flat with high elevation. This could help the runners develop good lung capacity so they're capable of functioning in thinner air. So for example, when they go to relatively low elevation courses at Boston or Beijing tournaments, the thicker atmosphere there would help them have a sustained oxygen boost.